was breezy. It was fall. The leaves, swirling around me, blazed fiery reds and oranges, in contrast with the occasional yellow and green leaves that still clung to the branches above. I had brought my guitar, Sunshine, and was resting up against the old mulberry tree that was always my favorite. That small moment was perfection. I was perfect. I was a girl and a guitar and a song. All else was gone. I felt in complete harmony with my surroundings, as if the wind was whispering praises and the birds were singing along with me. After playing for a few minutes, I stopped to rest my voice. I began to think about how similar nature and society are. It would be foolish to say that all people are the same, just as it would be foolish to say that all deciduous trees are the same. Yet, if one were able to look at all of the deciduous trees that have existed throughout the entirety of the universe, one would easily be able to identify characteristics that each of those millions of trees possessed. Though each tree's size and number of leaves and branches that it grows is unique, each tree begins to shed its leaves in autumn. Each tree buries its roots deep into the earth for stability and nutrients. People are just the same. We are all made of skin and bones. We all have felt joy and pain and illness. We all grew in our mother's womb, and we all are destined to return to the earth with which we have used to sustain us. We are all the same. You are me, and I am you. Have you ever thought about the seasons? Have you thought about how, even though the seasons are essentially the same weather conditions, annually repeating, each year is still slightly different? Even if a tree falls, the rest of the woods carries on without it. The birds still will sing, and the snow still will fall. The fallen tree even continues to serve a purpose, providing food and shelter for small animals, insects, and worms. As the seasons cycle back to summer, the barren patch of earth where the tree once stood may harbor seedlings, so another tree can fill the newly made space. Life has seasons, just as the year does. The cyclic nature of the seasons can be observed in humans as well. We age. As we do, our children will grow stronger than us and take on some of our responsibilities. We will eventually leave this place for a new adventure, be it Canada, Vegas, or heaven, and abandon our homes. These empty shells will be filled by new families, and the seasons will cycle yet again. Lovers will grow apart and come together again with new partners. Teachers will quit, and new teachers will come to replace them. Every empty space is eventually filled or transformed into a habitable space. My thoughts were abruptly stopped when an oriole, a neon yellow bird with a black and white head and wings, flitted across my field of vision. The oriole builds a uniquely shaped nest. Rather than nesting atop the sprawling branches, the oriole builds a hanging nest knit from strings, plant fibers, and small twigs compacted together with mud. Its shape most closely resembles a hollowed gourd that is hanging from the set of twigs above it. I remember sitting outside with my father and watching these birds in earlier years. We grabbed our binoculars one day and were pleased to see that a pair of orioles decided to build a nest high up in a tree located in our front yard. Those orioles used that same nest for 2 or 3 years. Eventually, there was a thunderstorm, and the branch that the nest clung to was snapped by lightning. We looked for the nest all across the ground the next day, but we never found it. It was winter time. I wondered if the birds would be upset to see that their wonderfully crafted home was missing when they came back next spring. I hadn't thought about the orioles much since the storm. Now my mind was filled with curiosity as to where the birds had lived since the storm forcefully evicted them. Were they still in the same tree, but on a sturdier branch? Did they move to a neighboring tree so that they could have the same scenic view of the woods from their new home? Were they so upset by the tree's sudden rejection of their place of dwelling that they moved to another tree far away so they would not have to fly past the inconsiderate tree anymore? I chuckled inside of my head as I thought about how quickly I had gone from singing songs to personifying trees. It was getting cold, and I knew my mother was making pumpkin bread, so I decided it would be best to go back inside. I also wanted to tell my father that I had seen one of the orioles. I gently placed my guitar back in its case and stood for a moment. I walked over a few feet to the small creek that ran through the woods. I saw a wobbly and blurred vision of my face in the water. The only things that I could distinguish were my dark brown eyes and hair, as they were strongly in contrast against my pale complexion. I know that the land that I live on was once inhabited by Native Americans. Had a Native American girl gone on a stroll and sung for pleasure, just as I had done? I wonder if, before returning home with berries from the mulberry tree that produced the seedling from which my mulberry tree came from, she stopped and looked at her reflection in the water. I am her, and she is me.